Good evening, everyone. So today we are into the sixth day of 7-day international faculty development program on mathematics, modeling in multidisciplinary domain. So today's resource person is Mr. Charan Kumar, Senior Consultant, Boston, USA. Currently, he works in Identity and Access Management domain. He took several roles from implementation tech to client-facing roles over the years. He had completed the master's from Syracuse University with a major in data science and minor in project management. Previously, he had worked for SR Steel as assistant manager in India and have managed a team of 8 members leading the electrical control room for the iron plant. He had his undergraduate degree from PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore. Welcome, Mr. Charan Kumar. Now it's your turn to make the day an excellent one. May I request the resource person to take off the dais and give his presentation. So we are about to start today's session, and our resource person is on the way and he is into the presentation now.
Hello, Geeta ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah. You can continue.
Yeah, give me a second. Let me share the screen. Okay. Welcome everyone for the.
It is visible. Your screen has been shared.
Okay, then let's start. Welcome everyone and good evening. So this is the for the sixth session of this webinar series. So I am Charan Kumar. I work as a senior consultant for senior solutions, where I have been working in the domain for identity and access management domain for almost 4 years, where I have moved over several roles. So initially I started as an implementation tech, and now I am then I moved over to a team lead, then a subject matter expert for in the identity and the access management domain. And the agenda for this meeting is to look into like what is what is identity and access management, what is governance and administration, and so on. And I will also cover like what are all the careers that students can have in the domain, and also what are the skills that that are required in this field. And I would like to share my experience in the domain. So let's start. Yeah. So first, I will cover like what's identity management on a high level, and I'll talk about user lifecycle management, which mainly talks about like what happens when a user, like when an employee, or let's say in a college environment, when a new professor or a new student joins the college. So I'll talk about like what happens when they join and what happens when they leave the organization. So the entire life cycle of what are all the IT resources they will have, like what happens in the background. And also I'll talk about how the user gets onboarded to all the IT systems, and also what are all the access that they have in the, for example, you have access, let's say in a college, you have access to several applications. I can say email is an application, or the HR system where we update our goals and performance evaluations. That is an application. Or we can talk about a paste where we check our paychecks and stuff, where all the financial information. That is application. So every application that we use, so basically we need access to in order to see the information within that application. So we will see like how applications are onboarded, and also how you are being authenticated and authorized for that particular application or for that particular access. Then we will talk about sub section of the whole domain, the identity and access management domain, which is governance, which mainly talks about certification and segregation of duties. But I will cover that in the subsequent slides in a very detailed manner. And then a final section where I'll talk about the careers that are available in this domain, and also what are the skills that is required. Yeah. First, what is identity? Let's say initially there are two types of identities: a human identity and non-human identity. So how we will identify a human being? So let's say if we talk about a particular example, let's say in an organization, let's talk about what are the identity that an employee has. For example, he can have an employee ID, a student ID, or and a name, first name, last name, and Aadhaar card is also a kind of identity. So other than that, you can say like he is a manager, he is assistant manager, or what like what sub company they work for, or who is the manager. So these are all some attributes to the particular user. So if we talk about physical, it's Aadhaar card, but in a digital world, everything is stored in a database. So we have to establish the identity of a user digitally and store it in a database. So this is the identity. And what is access? So as I said earlier, there are several applications in day-to-day world in when you talk about if we take an enterprise or organization. So some applications that we can relate to, or email, or HR system, or we enter the timesheets and where we apply for a leave request. So in an organization, there are different applications for each and every functionality. Or let's say you can have access to SAP system where you can manage logistics, where you can manage supply chain management, and so on. So, but you need access to each and every application. But not everyone have access. So let's say I work in procurement department. I only need access to certain subsections of the SAP system, not each and every T codes or each and every role within each and every web page within the SAP system. So let's say these are all the applications. Then comes, okay, now we know what is identity and what is access. What we do in this domain, identity and access management. So we basically identify the users that, okay, you are the particular user, and you are authenticated to enter into the system, and you're authorized to have certain level of access within the application. So I'll cover what is identification, what is authentication, and what is authorization in the next slide. But yeah, so we basically identify the user in, for example, the user name. It can be your employee ID or any unique ID within the organization. So let's say if you talk about, let's take an example of Gmail. Let me cover that in subsequent slides actually. So once you identify, authenticate, and authorize the user to enter into the application, then you have to manage the access of the user within the application. So there are several products available in the market which actually does this job for you. And yeah, so now we can talk about user lifecycle management. So what happens when an employee got hired? So the first process is he gets an offer letter and he joins the company. So once he joins the company, the first day of his job, the HR will create his access in the HR system. Then he will send manually emails or any sort of communication they have with the IT system, where they will create an email ID for the particular user, for the particular employee. Post that, what will happen is they will, if the employee has a laptop, they will create a Windows login. And let's say they need access to several applications. As I said, simple applications could be a HR system or a performance evaluation tool or a timesheet and so on. Am I audible now?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So where am I? Okay. Yeah. So these are all some manual activity that will happen on day one of your any employee. Once the request reaches to the IT department, they will create those accesses in the target system. Let's say in a Gmail or Microsoft Outlook, they'll create an email ID for that particular employee. They'll create a login ID for Windows, and they'll create access in each. But this is all a manual activity, and they have to get approvals manually for each and every access that they are giving. So this is part of audit requirements for any organization. But everything is done manually. But what happens when we automate it? So that is what identity and access management is. So we basically create the user. The HR will just input what's the name of the user or what's the email ID. He will give a set of parameters. He will enter the set of parameters in the portal that we are creating. But once that is done, once he attach all the approvals, everything is automated. So users already created, already a login is created for the user. An email ID is automatically created for the user in the target system. It could be a Active Directory or a database, whatever it is. So whatever the system that the organization is using. So we will actually create an email ID. We can do a lot of stuff. So it's not only email ID. So in the project that I'm currently working on, so there are almost like 250 business critical applications that employees are using day in and day out, and they need access. At least like hundreds of users who are joining the organization and leaving the organization on a daily basis. So even on such a scale, definitely we need automation, because we can't actually allow do it manually, because it will take a lot of time and it's inefficient. And also we will fail the audit and compliance required by the government. So we can do, so once we automate it, the HR will just input the parameters required for the employee, and instantly the provide access is provisioned for the end user. So let's say the employee is a manager, or he is a senior manager, or he is a project manager. So the moment they enter that this particular employee joined as a project manager in this organization, in this department, system will automatically detect what are all the access that the user needs to perform his job as a project manager in that particular department, and create all the necessary access and send email. We can also send email to the end user saying that, okay, these are the access that you require, and you can access with this username and this password, and that's it. We are done. So what happens after that? So user receives a username and password. What happens after that? Then comes our authentication part. So we can't let anyone. So first we need to identify the user. That is done using a username. So let's say in our case, it could be an email ID or an employee ID. So once you authenticate the user, what happens next? System will needs, once you identify the user, what happens next? It is authentication. So system, we have to prove the system that I am the actual user, and we and allow the, so that system can authenticate that you are allowed to have access in the particular application. And how we do that? It's the password in simple terms. So there are several ways we can authenticate the user. So one straight way is entering the password. But in several organizations, due to security issues, or like due to highly, like because they are business critical and they have very sensitive information, personal information and stuff, so they need multi-factor authentication. So maybe they receive a one-time password, and we will when we set up the identity and access management tool platform in the organization, we will also set up the multi-factor authentication, where after you enter the password, system will so it already happens in, if you see, like if you forget, if you enter Google, you can Gmail, you can enter the secondary one-time password. So every time you enter the password, email code is sent to you, and or you can see in bank transactions where a one-time password is sent to you only after, even though you apply a password, a secondary password, a one-time password OTP is required, so that system can authenticate you. And what are the other ways to authenticate you? There is single sign-on, where let's say you enter your password and enter into log into your laptop. Post that, you don't need to enter your password anywhere within the laptop, because the system already authenticated at a higher level at when you logged into your laptop itself. So it's single sign-on. Any application that you log in post that, like just enter Gmail, it will be logged into your Gmail account. Or enter your HR portal, just enter the password anywhere within the laptop. Your already system already authenticated at a higher level. So we can, there are several tools available in the market where we can, so it's single sign-on. Implement any application that for you log in post applications. Like just enter what Gmail, else we can do push notification Gmail account, where or enter your HR notification is sent to your email. Just enter the URL and all, you're already logged into the so it's single sign-on. So there are several tools available in the market on how you can authenticate the particular single sign-on. So let's say you are authenticate tools available in the market. Enter your username, where we can enter your password, and your authenticate sign-on. But that doesn't prove that application you are eligible to access all the information within implement the single sign-on application. So let's say what else we can do? We can do push notification, where let's say I apply for notification is sent to your email. But that doesn't just have to do, I should be eligible to only look at the page system, where I can only apply to a leave, not to approve a leave. On how you can authenticate the leave, only the head of the department. Let's say you can authenticate, approve the leave, or the manager, they can approve your password, so and your the subordinate, but that doesn't prove that access you are eligible to access all the information within the application within the application. So let's say, excuse me, yeah, they only have access only to apply the leave, but let's say approval screens are only visible to the manager. So I should be eligible allow the users only look at the page access the where I can only apply to a leave, not to approve a leave. Like the subsections within the application, apply the leave, they're allowed only the head of the department. Let's say I am a project manager, I'm allowed to see only certain they can approve the leave. I don't need access to subordinate consultant or any other rule. I don't need in the so basically I am within the application restricting the user's access within the application using authorization. Yeah, they only have access now user logs in, user is authenticated, but the approval screens are only visible to the manager. He can start working on the application day in and only to access. But what happens or when the user forgets his password? Like the subsections within the application, so which they are allowed for. Not you can always let's say I am a project manager, I am allowed to see only certain screens in Gmail. I don't need access to organization for consultant or any other rule. I don't need access. So in basically I am we need to authenticate, authorize, and we need to set the within the application like using authorization. Or let's say you change so now user logs in, user is any personal information you need to update within the system. He can start. We need to set everything day in and day. So that's. But what happens that when we can do? The user so for each and every step there are several tools. So let's say authentication, authorization, you can always user management service, and then comes the user in Gmail. So everything there are several tools in the market. We need to set each and everything. Some major companies like Oracle, IBM need to authenticate, authorize, and to set the I'll cover what are all the password resets, or let's say you change your last in the market or the latest. Any personal information. And then comes the user governance system, which is so we need to set everything, the identity and so that's domain user management. So this is basically so for each and every step there are several tools. So the user already have authentication, and it's been 6 months. Maybe he needs or he doesn't comes the user governance. So everything there are several tools how we can actually ensure major that companies like is Oracle eligible to IBM. Maybe he moved the role, RSA and so on. So I'll cover what are roles from mathematics department to computer available. So he doesn't need access to whatever access he and then comes the user governance, which is a new so now what happens is identity every based on the risk of so this is basically certification certify and we to ensure we will verify already have access and it's been 6 months. Maybe he needs or he doesn't and we will certify that okay this user what we should be eligible to have this access or not actually ensure that the user and if he is not eligible to have the access. Maybe he moved the role certification roles segregation of duties mathematics department basically computer science department. So he doesn't need access to whatever access the duties had when within the mathematics department. Actually we have so now what happens is slides for every and based on the later and then the final thing employee left the organization. So he doesn't need access for any of the applications. Like he shouldn't be able to see any. He shouldn't be able to see the email or access the HR system because he is not an employee anymore for the organization. So immediately the day he left the organization, based on organization policy, he is actually removed from all the access. So in sometimes the access is removed within hours or it takes a day or it takes a month. It's entirely based on the organization's policy and control over how they want to handle the leavers. Yeah. I'll pass on to the next slide. Yeah. So what happens during user onboarding? So we can create the user, and once we create the user in okay, now I'll go back, take a step back. Now the HR sent information, enter the information in the portal that we created in the product that we created for the organization. And immediately the product that we created, the solution, the platform that we created, it will create the identity of that particular user and in the target system. And after that, it will read the data from the target system. And let's say whatever update they have, we can update it, and delete is all about what happens during the termination. So we can create, read, update, and delete. We call it as CRUD operation in the system. And also, this organizations have several policies for joiners, leavers, and movers. So, what are joiners, leavers, and movers? So, joiner is nothing but an employee joins the organization. So, what happens? So, HR enters the system and enters the details of the user, and he is provided all the access as birthright. So, we define the policies for joiners. And leavers, we also define policies on what should happen when the employee leaves the organization, and also movers. So what happens when the user moves from?
Excuse me, just a minute. One of the participant have screened their screen, shared their screen. You just get out and then you can get in and share your screen.
Screen is visible only, ma'am.
Ma'am, one of the participant have screened his screen, shared his screen, ma'am.
No, ma'am. Now it is okay. A few minutes back he has screened, but
yeah.
now it is okay. Now we can see the presenter screen, ma'am.
Okay, then fine.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. And yeah. And what happens during moving? So let's say the employee moves from one department to another, in a simple case, but in an organization where which is spread across globally. I have seen users who are moving from Asia to Europe or India to US and so on. But the user didn't leave the organization actually. They just moved from one location to another location. But they still don't need access, whatever access they need in India, but we shouldn't remove the user because he's not terminated. So the organizations define policies for that as well. Ma'am, can you see the presentation?
Again, you try to share the screen.
Okay, then let me try stop sharing it.
Yeah, you stop sharing and go.
Can everyone see my screen now?
Yeah, your screen has been shared now. Yes, it has been.
Okay. Okay then. So let's say in an let's say what is the access process that's happening in several organizations now, where let's say there are 100,000 users or 5,000 users, and there are only 10 users who are employees who are joining in a day, like average, like 100 users in a, not even 100, like 200 users in a month. That is still manageable by the HR. He can still get all the approvals, send it to the IT department. They will do all the validations. They will actually go to the target system, create your email ID or create your access in the HR portal and so on. But when you think about an organization who have 50,000 employees, or let's say the client I am working for, where there are more than 100,000 employees, it is nowhere possible to do this manual activity, which is very time consuming, inefficient, and prone to errors. So what as a person who actually implements the identity and access management product in the client location, what we do is we actually automate the entire process. Whatever I have mentioned in the previous slide, the entire user lifecycle management from the day user gets hired to he is leaving the organization. We do all these services, like we do identification, authentication, authorization, and there is single sign-on, And there is certification, segregation of duties, which comes under user governance. So there are several tools for each and every functionality that I have just mentioned, and we implement those solutions in the client locations for the organization, so that they can automate and they can eliminate all the disadvantages of manual process. Yeah. So what we do, we actually create the users, establish the identity. After that, we will establish all the authentication and authorization rules, and also provide the birthright access, which, let's say I am a project manager, or let's say I am a like head of the department, or I am a professor. So in in mathematics department or computer science department, so I need certain access. So we actually provide, once we enter that information, all your basic information, system also automatically detects what access you need and already provide it as part of your birthright access. So we can do that. Yeah. Now, finally, what is application onboarding? So what we do is, let's say you already joined the organization, and you now need access to, let's say, Tableau, or you now need access to SaaS, but you don't need access now. You don't have license, or like, it's basically you need to reach out to the IT department to ask, okay, can you please provide me access to SaaS tool or Tableau, or any SharePoint site, or anything, or a shared Google Drive. So what we do is, we onboard the application to the portal. So basically, it's like an Amazon cart, where we actually browse for the product and add it to the cart, and just pay the money and you get the product. Same way, there are market standard products where we actually create a portal, and where it lists all the applications that are available in the organization, and it will list all the access that you need in a particular. So let's say I moved from, let's say, as a business, I joined the organization as a business analyst, and I moved to project manager role. So I no longer require the business analyst role. So I will go to this particular platform, just select the application that I need. So let's say I need access to Tableau, or I need access to Microsoft Project. So what I'll do is, I'll just browse for project, click search for it, and just click add to cart. And okay, now within the project MS project, I need access as a project manager, not as a business analyst. So I'll select project manager and just click submit. So a ticket is raised, and it'll, so not that just I raise the request, it should be I get my access. So basically, it needs to be approved. So it will go to my manager, or it will go to 2 levels of approval or 3 levels of approval. Maybe let's say I applied my access as like, let's say XYZ access I need in particular application, and I am a lecturer. So what will happen is, maybe it goes to my manager. After that, it will go to my head of the department, and maybe if that access, like if you are, let's say you're requesting for admin access within that tool. So what will happen is, it is a very critical access. Maybe it will go to the head of the organization itself, like maybe the principal. So, but in a let's say in a corporate environment, it goes to the line manager, and then it goes to the head of the department, and then it goes to the business application owner. So everything is basically the once you submit a request, how many levels of approval, it is decided by the risk associated with the particular access that you are requesting. So we work with business to actually assess the risk based on several factors, and finally come up with the risk associated for the particular access, and configure them accordingly, so that once user submits the request for a particular access, it is automatically routed to all the corresponding approvers for that access. and an email notification is sent, and also they can log into the system and they can actually see what access they have requested and approve it. Or let's say he doesn't require that access, they can simply reject it and let them know the reason. And a rejection email is also sent to the user, or approval notice is also sent to the requester. So it is we had to configure all these items within the product, and once all the approvals are done, again it's automatic. So access is automatically provisioned for that particular user for that particular access at the target system, and the email ID and password is account login and password is shared with the particular user. And also we have delegation, where we can do, like, let's say I am going on a vacation for a month and I won't be approved access. So what happens is, in that case, I can set up out of office that I won't be available from this time to this time, so that it will be, you can delegate your authority to approve to someone else within the organization or within the department. So why we are doing all these things? Like why we are like authenticating, authorizing, and everything is done just to ensure that only the right people within the organization, they have to get the right access. Like they don't need anything less or anything more, and they have to get it at the right time. Like it's not like they request it now and they get it after a month. It will disrupt the business. We have to ensure that there is business continuity. So our entire motto is to ensure that right people gets right access at the right time. Yeah, as like I think we have discussed this in the past, like authentication. I have mentioned about password, multi-factor authentication, where we one-time password is sent to you, or a push notification is sent to your mobile, where you can authenticate yourself as an additional security, and also a single sign-on. Yeah. And what is authorization? Authorization is nothing but limiting the access within the application. So it's not like you have access. Yeah, I think I have covered this as well in the previous slide. Restricting access of the application for a particular user, so that he won't be able to see all the pages, and he will be able to see only, let's say I mentioned about requesting for the holiday. So only I can apply for a holiday, so I can see the pages that allows me to apply for a holiday, but the approval page is visible only to the approval, like let's say the head of the department. And yeah, so what's next? Yeah, now comes governance. So after all these things happen, so user is having access and everything is going smooth. So now we need to ensure that there is a visibility across the enterprise, so that, let's say, what access, let's say the business application owner is asking, okay, what access does Charan have in the organization as a whole? So he might, I have access to several applications within the organization. So, but if we have everything under one product, it's just that we just go enter into the tool and just search for my name. It will give me all the details that all the access that I have in the system. So this is to prevent unauthorized access as well. So it also ensures that, okay, Charan have these accesses. Let's say I have access like A, B, C, D to whatever, like let's say I have 10 accesses, and I'm not supposed to have, let's say, a particular role. Like I'm not a business analyst anymore. I moved to a new role, project manager. So what happens at that point? So they can actually remove my access as a business analyst and allow me to perform, have the access only as a project manager. So basically, we are allowing the higher management, the senior management, to have a better visibility to identity and access privileges that the users have within the organization across the enterprise, and also prevent unauthorized or inappropriate access, I would say. Then comes, okay, why we are doing that? Like, what happens when we allow users, like we don't have all this governance in place, like we are allowing the users, we are doing everything manually, and we don't see what's happening in the, like what access the user have in the lower level. So what the I think everyone have heard about the Enron scandal. Like this happened, I think, in back in 2001, where there were it's all about the, like they actually misled the stockholders and everyone, where and they kind of tampered with the evidence and the access they had in the system, and they actually tampered with the financial statements, and finally they this actually led to creation of regulations such as SOX, which is Sarbanes-Oxley Act, which is enacted in 2002, where and the government, they it is now mandatory for all the organizations to define, enforce, and review the organization policies and controls, so that they don't end up in audit failures and complaints. So that only which will eliminate fraud, and which will eliminate all the things that can go wrong when the user, when inappropriate, when users who don't have that particular access have actually access to that particular application. So they can actually use that access to do like if it contains financial information, let's say. So they can use that information to their advantage and cause issues to the organization. So we need to ensure only the right people have access, and we need to ensure that access is actually approved and certified. So now comes the certification. I was talking about. So let's say after 6 months, we certify that, okay, this user actually moved from this role to another role. Why is he having access still to this information or still to this application? So we actually, and also this certification, this is also a cycle, and it is done either quarterly or every 6 months, or every year, or not at all. Everything is based on, let's say I only have read-only access, then I don't actually need access, don't actually need to certify, because I'm only having a read-only access. It's not going to harm anyone. So again, it's entirely controlled and defined by the business. And so the certification frequency, it's then based on the risk associated with the particular access. And comes the segregation of duties. Before that, I'll cover a little bit about privileged access. What is privileged access management, and emergency access management, and dormant account. Privileged access management is how we actually ensure that users are having access to critical access, such as admin access in the system. So how that is being handled. And emergency access is nothing but, let's say the entire system is down. So someone from IT should have like all the access within the application to ensure that it's coming back, like to get the system up and running. So that's like how is that emergency access is managed. And dormant account is nothing but, let's say you haven't used a particular application for, let's say 60 days or 90 days or 120 days. But we know that every access that, let's say even a email account, right? It's a license. So the number of users increase in a particular application, you actually have to pay for that particular organization which is providing you a license. For example, Tableau, let's say 10 people are having access to Tableau in your organization. If you need one more license, then you have to pay Tableau. So we need to ensure that if the users are not using the account, the organizations have policies around that on what to do if the user is dormant for almost for 30 days or 60 days or 9 days and so on. So how we manage it, that's the dormant account. Yeah, certification, we just saw like every access that an individual have, it should be properly certified by appropriate personnel. It's not like anyone can certify, only the managers, or like you can define the certifier, who will be the certifier. And yeah, examples could be like managers certifying their subordinates, head of the department certifying all the professors in the department, that okay, this person works in my department and he needs this access. So that's certification. And this is why we are doing this. So we are doing this because we have to ensure that all the users of all the systems are having appropriate access. Like they shouldn't have nothing less and they shouldn't have nothing more. And if they have anything more, we need to remove those inappropriate access to the users, and the system will automatically remove them once the certifier says that he doesn't require that particular access. Yeah. Then comes segregation of duties. So what is segregation of duties? So in an organization, there are several people like in different departments working on different roles. Let me take an example of purchase requester and purchase approver, or a timesheet requester or timesheet approver. Or a holiday like a vacation, like I'm requesting for a leave, and some like as a leave requester, and someone has to approve it. It's not like in the particular portal, let's say in the like whatever the HR portal, I'm applying for a leave. So we have to segregate the duties. So users for having access to request for a leave shouldn't have the access to approve the leave for himself. Then it's actually violating and it's a risk. So I can just apply for a leave and apply and approve my leave for myself and go on a vacation. It doesn't make sense. So basically, we can ensure that we actually develop a set of rule sets, and we establish what are the risks associated if those two violating roles, the requester and approver roles, are together. And once, if let's say the accidentally or unintentionally someone approved the access, so we can do preventive. So even before having the access, both requester and approver, we can, before having the access, like both requester and approver, we can we will allow the system to detect that okay, this user is requesting for both requester and approver. Stop it right then and there. So we reject it at the time of request itself, or let's say the user already had access, both requester and approver. We can actually run the rule sets to determine that okay, these are all the users who are having violating rules, and we need to remove them. So we can do both preventative segregation of duties as well as detective segregation of duties, which is pre and post. Like user already had the access and users requesting for the new access. Yeah, so we can define segregation of duties in the portal that we are creating. Yeah, and finally, privileged access management. 1 second. Yeah. Finally, it's privileged access management, where we manage critical access, and let's say how admin access is managed within the application. So it's highly critical access. Who are having this access can do anything within the application. So and it's highly critical. So and highly secure. So we store all the credentials in a shell, where we monitor each and every activity performed by the user who is having that particular admin access, and we can protect the credentials as well. So it's basically managing the privileged access like admin. And then comes the emergency access management, and where we talk about, like, let's say there is an emergency and users, someone from the IT system needs emergency access to a particular admin role, so that they can keep this system up and running. Like they have to get the system back online. So we have only limited time for like we don't have like we should allow emergency access only for a certain, like let's say for 1 day or 12 hours, and we had to get proper approvals for that, and then provide that access. And immediately after that specific time, like 12 hours, the access is removed automatically. And the dormant account, I mentioned about the dormant, when users become dormant, they don't use a particular account, what we should do about that. Yeah. So as I said earlier, like the enterprise, there are several products in the market. Let's say from Oracle, we have OIM and OAM, which is Oracle Identity Manager and Oracle Access Manager. Then we have SailPoint, ForgeRock, RSA, Savient, Ping. So everything like let's say Ping, it's mainly used for single sign-on, and ForgeRock, we can it has actually both identity and access management. It can actually authenticate and also authorize. And we have RSA, which we can use for multi-factor authentication, and Savient for identity governance and administration. So these are several products that are available and we can implement. Yeah. Now we came to our final slide. Yeah. What are the career options that you have in this? So in the past 2 decades, due to increased concerns over the security and what kind of access the users can have within the organization, there is a like the scope of the domain is increasing enormously, and the opportunities are also there are lots of opportunities in the market. So anyone who just graduated out from a college, they start they can start as an associate, and also that there are 2 parts within the organization. Either you can start your career and pursue your career in a technical path, or you can start your career and move towards a managerial path. So first, let me talk about the technical part. You start as an associate, you learn the tool, like whatever tools that I have mentioned in the previous slide. You learn, like you can learn the tools and you become a subject matter expert, and you actually design the solution for the particular for a particular client, and then so basically implementation specialist, and then you move more towards SME role, a subject matter expert role, and then you lead the team at a technical capacity, guiding your team to actually implement the product at the client location, and you become a system architect. And yeah, I think you got the idea. Like you pursue your career only on a technical line, where you and the next part is the managerial line, where you start as an associate, you learn the tool, but over a period of time, you move towards more like client-facing roles. Like you actually go to the client location, you interact with the customers, and actually gather all the requirements, and like you can actually manage the budget for the particular project, you manage the timelines, you manage the risk, and basically you kind of manage the whole project and ensure that the particular project where we implement the product in the particular for the particular customer, it is delivered with utmost quality within the stipulated time, and within the budget that we got approved for. So once you have a project manager, then you move towards program manager, where you manage multiple projects at a time, and then you move on to account manager, where you find new opportunities, you find new clients for your organizations, for the organization you're working for, so that you can generate revenue for the organization. Yeah. So there are 2 lines. One is technical and managerial. And what are the skills that are required? So what I have understood is database. So the database skills, like let it be a SQL, or which is Microsoft SQL, or PL SQL, which is Oracle, or MySQL database. So knowing the basics of database is very important if you want to pursue a career as a in a technical route. And then you need to know about connectors and APIs, which is application programming interface, where you need to know about the basics of how what is the architecture for Active Directory or REST, SOAP, or how a DB connector works, a database connector works, and so this is basically it'll let you know that how the systems talk within each other. There is a client, there is a server, so how like let's say you are entering a URL in your browser, so how it is actually fetching the data from the target, from the source to the target, so how that is being handled. So when you are implementing these products in the client location, you actually need to configure the systems to talk within each other. So you definitely need to know the basics of AD, REST, DB, Azure AD, which is from Microsoft, Salesforce, and so on. There are like so many APIs and connectors which are helpful to actually connect and let the system talk within each other. And then cloud. Yeah, when I talk about cloud, like there are different services, there is like most of the organizations are now moving towards cloud. Like they are not hosting their data in local servers. So they are moving to cloud. So we have our market leader Amazon. So Amazon is having Amazon Web Services, and Microsoft they're having their Azure, and also Google also entered. They're also competing in the market, and they have Google Cloud. And yeah, if you have some basic idea in and if you want to move as a DevOps engineer, then you should definitely know at least one of these. And then we talk like you should know the server management tools like Linux, Unix. You need to know the commands, and you actually need to know like how to ensure that like there is less traffic, and you route the traffic to the to proper servers, and also manage the load between between servers, among the servers if there are like multiple servers in that organization. And finally, like irrespective of you're pursuing your career in technical or managerial role, you like communication and interpersonal skills are like mandatory and very basic, where like even like within your team and also when you're interacting with the client, these are all that like communication and interpersonal skills are very important to ensure that your career is destined for success. Yeah, I think that's it from me for today. Any questions?
Participants, it is your turn. If any queries you have, you can just get it clarified from our resource person of today's session.
No, ma'am. Very nice presentation.
Excuse me, sir.
Thank you.
Hello? Hello?
Mr.
Yeah.
Charan?
Hello?
Excuse
Hello?
me, sir.
Yeah. Hello. Yes, sir.
So nice
Hello.
presentation, sir. First of all, I thank.
Yeah, thank you for that, sir.
Okay, sir. For identification, only what are the fields are used, sir? Only email ID. Do you want any other things for identifying persons?
So there are several identities that we are using. Like it depends on like I have implemented these products in several for several customers, several clients. Some applications, some organizations, they use their email ID, which is like you can have only one email ID, right? It's across, it's unique across the enterprise. Some organizations, they use email ID. Some use employee ID. So let's say when you join the organization, you might have given an employee ID. So they use employee ID. But when you talk about like a government, how they are identifying. So using a Aadhaar card, other PAN card, other license number. So basically, what the identity should be unique for that particular user. So whichever is the unique field, we can use it. So it's
Sir,
depend
my
on.
question is, nowadays, that will be shared from one organization to another organization. How it will be confidential? Better to use only email ID. I think Aadhaar number, everything is confidential to the each and every individual learner, sir.
Yeah. So, but I am talking about a particular organization, right? So, let's say we are implementing this. We are implementing this portal only for a particular college. Let's say we are implementing only for PhD Tech, or it's let's implementing only for particular organization. Let's say we are implementing this for IBM. So we don't have to share this information with Microsoft, right? If we are implementing IBM,
I think we have
the
to
employee
reliable
ID.
to both user and as well as employee. I think organization.
So we are actually implementing this product within an organization, not across organizations.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
So, Dr. CM Batra, I think only employee ID should be considered now. I think
So
instead of mail.
as I said, it is not like actually even as a implementation specialist, I don't have control over what it is entirely defined by the business. Like let's say the head of the department or the CTO of that particular organization, they decide which should be the unique ID. So some organizations I have worked, they have used employee ID. So some some companies, they have used email ID. Some use employee ID, and some use they generate a unique 6-digit ID for when an employee joins the organization. They use that alphabets, alphanumerical characters as unique ID. So and some use the first name dot last name, which is not always unique. So it's entirely dependent by the organization.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, finally to conclude, and today's session, it was a fantastic one, and our research person, Mr. Charan Kumar, have explained clearly about the identification, authentication, and also authorization. And wherein the authorization, he has also specified that it is limiting the access within the application. Fantastic. And also he has highlighted how to ensure that right people get right access at the right time. So very well done in that case. And finally, he has elaborated on privileged access management, emergency access management, and dormant access management. And we thank you very much, sir, for spending your valuable time with us and giving us inputs on a different platform. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, like sharing my experience among everyone, like to let you know, like what's the so I have been explaining what the application, like what's the platform domain I am working on for the past 4 years, and it's been an honor. It's been a pleasure to share my experiences. To share my experience.
Dear participants, tomorrow the timing for the session is 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And as soon as you submit tomorrow's feedback, immediately you will be getting a link. So you can go to that link and you can download your e-certificate. Dear participants, tomorrow it is the last day of our faculty development program, and towards the end, as you do it regularly, you will be submitting the feedback form, and in that you will be getting a link. So if you just go to that link, you will be generated a certificate with your name. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you very much.